Welcome to our mostly unscripted and unedited podcast. I'm Paula Kidd, nutritionist.
And I'm her sister-in-law and bestie, Sarah Kidd.
We love discussing all things related to health, including mindset, self-care, and nutrition.
Join us as we share coffee, laughs, recipes, and random thoughts tossed in for good measure.
You'll leave each conversation feeling motivated and with actionable strategies that you can use right away to improve your health and help you stop feeling fat, foggy, and fatigued.
See you there.
Welcome back. Sarah and I are going to talk about excuses. We have some suggestions on how to bust those excuses. This is the first of a series. We're going to talk about 5 different excuses over this series. And the first one is about lack of time. I don't have time to eat healthy, to do the meal prep, to do the whatever. So before we get into that, we're just going to do quick, let you know what we're drinking and what we're drinking out of. Yes. So what are you having today, Sarah?
Yes, I just have straight up coffee with cream. That's one of my favorite drinks. It's not hydrating, but it's comforting and I love it and I look forward to it every day.
Awesome. And that mug, I haven't seen that one before.
This is my favorite coffee mug. It's a David's tea mug because they just used to make such beautiful mugs. I'm not as... They still do make some beautiful mugs, but this one, I just love the color. This is my favorite color and it's very springy.
Yes.
And
does that have speckles on it? It's hard to tell.
It actually does. If you look, I don't know if you'll be able to see, but it actually does. It's very lightly speckled. It kind of reminds me of like an egg, like a bird egg.
A robin is it. Yeah. So I am also having coffee. I put in some heavy cream. That's my favorite thing, but I also put in some collagen peptides. So I'm trying to strengthen my nails a little bit. I'm finding that they're breaking for whatever reason. And so collagen peptides can help with that. So that's what I put in coffee. And I recently treated myself to a milk frother. And so I put the heavy cream and the peptides in this milk frother. And so it heats the milk and frosts it. So you can't really tell, but it's got a little bit of a foam on there. And this is... I have a couple of different mugs that I refer to as my mindful moment mugs because they don't have a handle.
I love it.
I can hold it with one hand, but it feels safer to hold it with 2. So I actually have to stop what I'm doing. I can't multitask except for doing a podcast while I'm drinking my coffee. I can talk, but that's about it. So it's just a reminder to stop and enjoy the coffee rather than just mindlessly drinking it and then wanting another one because I don't know what happened to the one I just drank, right? I'm not paying attention.
Yeah.
So I have another one, which I'll show you later, but yeah.
Oh, awesome. I love that. And I often will hold my coffee like this because, especially in the colder months, my hands are always really cold.
Yeah.
And so it is like a hug for your hands or like a hot water bottle for your hands or whatever, a magic bag, whatever you use to soothe yourself or warm yourself up. So I love that idea of stopping. That's great.
Yeah. So I bought this one at Winners, I think. They have the most interesting mug selection there. So you'll hear me say that a lot over the course of this podcast. I bought this at Winners. So, okay. So our excuse today, number 1, we're counting backwards. They don't have to be in this order, but this is one of the very common ones that we hear from clients is that I don't have time to eat healthy. So the first thing I want to say is to stop using that language. If this is something that you find yourself saying and it's getting in your way of achieving your health goal, it doesn't have to be true. There are other things that could be true. So I suggest that people change the language to something more empowering. And so an example would be, life is really busy right now. So acknowledging that's reality, right?
Yes.
We're not trying to pretend that it's not busy.
Exactly.
But we're changing the what comes after that. We're going to say something like, it's likely not going to get less busy, so I'm going to make some changes. So I am going to make my health a priority, and you're putting the power back in your hands rather than just saying, I'm just too busy. Like I can't do anything about it, right?
Yes. We've talked about that in a past episode, I think, about changing the way we talk about things, not denying what's true, but making a more positive statement that can lead us to action. So I even like asking it as a question. Life is not going to get less busy. How can I
Right.
make time? Where can I change my schedule so that I have time to do this thing? It's
Yes.
important.
And like, what's one thing I can do? You don't have
Yes.
to do this huge overall change of your schedule or your habits, right? Just what's one thing that I can do consistently. So maybe it's just one meal a day that you can make from scratch, or make sure that it's healthy, make sure that it fits with your goals. Just one thing, or one.
Yeah.
Maybe it's just your snacks, like something.
Yep.
I hesitate to say the word guarantee, but I feel like I guarantee there's one thing you can do, right?
I guarantee
Oh.
this guarantee.
Yeah. Okay, good.
Because and here's a suggestion right out of the gate, you know, something that I'm doing. So I can relate a lot to what things I am currently doing that fit in with this, so that you're knowing that we're doing this. We're not just saying it, right? So one thing that I started doing is making a smoothie for my breakfast. And the smoothie is packed with nutritious things. It's a great way to boost my veggie intake. And it takes less than 5 minutes to make, and I can drink it on the way to work. And I can't have nuts where I work, but I can put a nut butter or nuts and seeds in my smoothie and drink it on the way to work. Then I'm not even bringing it in, and I'm not hungry until lunchtime. It's wonderful. It's a wonderful tool that I can use anytime I need 5 minutes or less.
Yeah. Yep. Smoothies are a great idea. And you can actually make it ahead of time, right? If you really feel like the morning is a bit too busy and you don't want to
Yep.
just run at a time and miss that opportunity, you can do it the night before, right? And
Mhm.
you need to stir it, or yeah.
Yep.
So that's a great idea. So another thing that, like, just from a mindset perspective, we often talk about how this isn't going to be a perfect journey, and if you have a day where things don't go as planned, and you really do feel like you've run out of time by the time, just not letting that be an excuse to completely fall off track, because it's never going to be perfect. So expecting it to be perfect, that's another excuse, really, don't you think? I mean, maybe we should add six, but it's never going to be perfect.
Yeah.
And, like, knowing that from the get-go can be really helpful when you have a day where it's not as you had planned or not as you had envisioned, right? It
Yeah.
will get easier with practice. It's about developing that habit, that routine.
Exactly. We can't expect, it's completely unrealistic to expect that, things will always go well. And once we implement something once, that it will work every time. I mean, that's just not helpful thinking, I don't think. And it's not realistic. And so, I think the most common meal that people don't have time for, I know that's true for me, is dinner. Dinner is the one where we tend to try to home cook more. We want to bring our family together at the table. It's the most sometimes busy time of day. You're maybe the most tired you've been all day. And maybe you haven't planned ahead. So it feels overwhelming to think about grocery shopping and then and then food prepping and then cooking and then eating and then cleaning up.
Right.
There's
I'm
one other thing
exhausted just listening to you say that.
I know. Me too. So, what about just planning dinner, right? What about just planning the simplest thing? How about just simplify it until that habit becomes a bit better? Something as simple as a sheet pan meal where the meat and the vegetables are together on the tray, some simple seasonings. You make it together, it comes out at the same time. You've dirtied one dish and maybe one bowl, like one tray and one bowl, right? And then at least you've got yourself going.
Yeah.
It doesn't always have to be a sheet pan dinner for you to eat
Right.
from scratch at home, right? But that gets you going.
Right. Yeah. And I think even just planning ahead, just take 5 minutes the day before just to visualize what it is you want to have for dinner or breakfast or whatever, and making sure that you have those items in your pantry. And if you don't, then making plans either to change the recipe or to stop at the store on the way to work, on the way home, whatever. Like, just 5 minutes can make such a huge difference the next day, right?
Absolutely.
I'm a huge fan of visualizing for whatever it is you want to do, not even just cooking, but just thinking ahead. Um, there's something so powerful about that, about getting you prepared mentally, which makes that the physical part so much easier, right?
Absolutely. So a pitfall that I've fallen into in my journey to plan my meals so that, so that I can make time and struggling to make that time. Sometimes I get my week planned on a weekend. I sit down, it's relaxing. I have a coffee. I plan my whole meals for the week. And then I do one grocery shop and bang, it all works out. Most of the time, that's not how it works out. Unexpected things happen in our schedules and we have busy weekends and things like that. So what I've learned is that if I can even just get one day ahead, even if I can just think about dinner before it's dinner time, sometimes it's even just a matter of I get in the car with my kids to head home from work/school. And I just say to them, hey, what do you guys feel like having for dinner? And we toss the ball around, so to speak, come up with something that we'd like. We narrow down the options based on the time we have and what we're craving or what the weather's like, whether we want salad or something hot. And sometimes that's all it takes is just to talk about it for 5 minutes on the drive home. And that gets me going so that I can hit the ground running when I get home.
Right.
And either run over to the store if I need to or on the way home and pull something really quick together.
Yeah.
So yeah, it doesn't have to be, perfect weekly meal planning every week.
Right. Yeah. So just to finish up with that, you've kind of mentioned in the sheet pan meal, but like just batch cooking in general. So whenever you make something that you're making at least double that recipe whenever possible so that you have multiple meals, right? It seems like common sense, but a lot of times we just don't think that way when we're thinking about preparing a meal, right? So making
Exactly.
sure that you have leftovers. And something that I think we both do is, sort of cooking meat and vegetables with minimal seasoning and then changing up the seasoning from meal to meal. So that's one way of batch cooking. So that sheet pan meal, for example. So it's just chicken and veggies. Maybe you just put salt and pepper on it, a little bit of olive oil, you cook them, and then you could have multiple meals where you're just adding different seasoning, or you're maybe putting those components in a wrap or on a salad or on a bed of rice or shirataki pasta or whatever that is, and then changing up the sauce or the seasoning. And then you're really only cooking once, but you're getting different flavors that alleviates that boredom because sometimes that's an excuse too, right? Of eating too many leftovers. So you're still getting healthy homemade food with variety of flavor and minimal cook.
Yeah, just this week, I made a salad one day and I had hard boiled egg and avocado in it. I was trying to go really whole foods and I made my own dressing. It was really simple and delicious. And then the next day, I made the exact same salad, but instead I threw leftover salmon from the night before, just cold and cooked, not raw. And then I used the dressing and I found that the flavors had mixed and the dressing had an even better flavor. And just with the salmon, it went really well. And it was like a different lunch completely.
Yeah.
Even though both times it was, spinach, baby spinach, and some cut up vegetables, same dressing, just changed up a little bit of what's in it. So that's really easy to do. And the other thing too is that when you get into a habit of batch cooking or prepping and planning your meals, you often end up with leftovers so that when you go to work the next day, you don't actually have to think about lunch. And in that way, you're saving time. I know that I'm less rushed in the morning if I've got a little container of leftovers that I'm just grabbing for my meal at work that day.
Yeah.
It just simplifies a lot of other thought processes that happen through the week, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Reducing the number of decisions that you need to make in a day is it somehow gives you more energy, don't you find?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
There's an exhaustion that comes with repeatedly having to make decisions. So
Yes.
you can do ahead of time. And again, it's often, I find it's easier to make a decision ahead of time when it comes to food. When you're in that, you're in the day before and you're not rushed and you're not pressed for time, making that decision about what you're going to eat the next day, it's easier to do ahead of time rather than in the moment, right? Then you're into that reactive behavior where you're hungry and you don't know what you're going to eat. So it's easier just to grab fast food or something, right?
Yes, exactly. And I think one final point to make is that it isn't easy to make these kinds of changes. We acknowledge that we've done it ourselves. And And it does require a shift in priorities. I mean, it can be true that in the way your schedule is laid out now, there is no time to make a change. And so what that requires then of us is to really honestly reflect. Could I watch 1 hour of TV instead of 2? Or even 1.5 instead of 2? I mean, or half an hour instead of 1. I don't know how much TV we watch, probably more than we think. But I think if we really look at our schedule and really bump up our eating higher on the priority list, we will actually make that time and the rest sorts itself out.
Right.
I do think we have to really be aware and visualize, as you said, how important is my health to me?
Mhm.
How important is having energy, feeling good, and feeding myself and or maybe my family as well, healthy, more nutritious food on a regular basis? How important
Right.
is that to me? And I think when we're doing that, it makes other aspects of our lives easier and more enjoyable. So I think it should be up there pretty
Yeah.
high.
I think so too. There's a ripple effect when you make your health a priority, healthy food a priority. It seeps into all areas of your life and improves things.
Exactly.
Yeah. And I had another thought as you were talking about that when it comes to meal prep. If that feels daunting, if it feels like I'd rather be sitting and watching something on Netflix, you could combine the two, right? I'll often, if I know that I'm going to spend a couple of hours doing some meal prep, I'll bring my computer in the kitchen and put on a movie that I've been looking forward to watching or something. So I'm kind of doing both. You make it fun, or maybe you have a glass of wine, or, you know, some other
Yep.
favorite beverage that can make it fun, or put on some music and
Yep.
sing while you cook. So
Exactly. I've done all of those things,
yeah,
or listening to a podcast is perfect
yeah,
because I don't
yeah,
have to look at the screen. I can just keep listening and give it my attention while
yeah,
I'm doing kind of the things to get meals ready and,
right. Yeah.
those simple prep tasks.
Right. All right. So I'll just do a quick review of what we talked about today. So this is the first of a series of 5 episodes where we're talking about excuses that people have for not eating healthy. And one of them is I don't have time. So we talked about, first of all, changing that language. So saying that something more empowering, like life is busy right now and it's likely not going to change. So I'm going to make my health a priority and I'm going to do something. So what's one thing I can do today? One thing I can do consistently. Yeah. To make health priority that you can fit into your schedule. Realizing and acknowledging from the get-go that it's not going to be perfect. And so if you have a day that doesn't go the way you expect, that's okay. It's not a reason to, get off plan sort of thing. We also talked about doing batch cooking, about cooking one meal, but lots of it so that you have food for the week. Simplifying things as much as possible, making it needs to be a priority, basically. And we just talked about how that can affect your life in many ways positively. So it's absolutely worth it. It's not easy, but it does get easier over time.
Can I share one quick example? I know
Yeah.
we're summarizing and closing up, but so just this past week, someone who has practiced all of the things to prioritize healthy eating, I had a situation where I knew I was going to have exactly 1.5 hours before I had to do between coming home from work and needing to go somewhere else. And I managed to fit cooking from scratch, something that I was looking forward to eating. It was roast vegetables and a piece of salmon. I baked it in the air fryer. I threw together a different meat recipe with the help of my daughter for the rest of the family because they're not salmon lovers, and same vegetables for them. And I managed to fit in a yoga all before in that hour and a half. And I ate the food too. So I had time to do. So I mean, it is doable. And I didn't just get there like this. It was through practice and making it a priority and practicing that mindfulness of keeping it up there as a priority. And you know what? It was a great day.
Yeah. Awesome. Good. Well, thanks for joining us, everybody. Thank you, Sarah. And we'll see you in the next episode where we'll talk about another excuse.
Yeah. Busting excuses.
All right. Bye for now.
Bye.